Hello and welcome to The Resource, the podcast propelling employer brands to recruit smarter and retain better. I'm your host, Priscilla Peters.
And I'm your other host, Scott Dismuke. Priscilla, it's been a while since we've done this. I feel like a really long time. And I guess technically it hasn't, but I was thinking this morning before we hopped on that I was like, I maybe have forgotten how to do this.
I know because last month was our episode from the R&R conference, which great job, by the way, doing all those interviews while I was working at the conference. But that was a good episode.
You were doing the important stuff.
Well, yeah, you know. And our guest today is kind of a follow-up to some of the stuff that we talked about at R&R. So we'll get to that in a minute. But listen, we normally would be talking about like what's going on with our sports teams of the day. But unfortunately, we're in what I call the April to August crap town of sports.
Well, so
baseball, except for baseball.
Well, baseball, we're, University of Arkansas.
Hey, number one right now, ranked number one.
Number one. And as we've talked about it before, I'm a huge St. Louis Cardinal fan, so things are just getting started up there. But we're avoiding the massive elephant in the room as we are recording this. What's going on? Like literally right at this moment that we talked about.
Yes.
We have a plane that has either landed or will soon be taking back off from Lexington, Kentucky, back to Fayetteville with the new head basketball coach for the University of Arkansas.
I know.
None other than John Calipari. I mean,
listen, could we have even predicted it? First of all, let me just say, in my heart of hearts, I love Musselman and will miss him dearly. Let me just start by saying he and his family were so great for Arkansas. They were amazing. But I'm kind of excited. and I mean, I thought we were, well, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of who I thought we were going to get, but it was not who we got. I'll just put it that way.
No. That one was late night on Saturday night or I don't remember what night it was when I started reading it on Twitter. And then I'm like, well, I can't go to bed. I got to see how this shakes out. And, as we were getting on here today to record this, it looks like everything's kind of finally done and contract signed. And I told you before we hopped on, and for those of you who've listened before, my son is a sophomore at the University of Arkansas, and I texted him when they announced that they're having an event at Bud Walton Arena tomorrow at 6 that he better be there or I will quit paying for his college. So
priorities, priorities.
I want him to experience this. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, buckle up. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes out for sure.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is like the two of us as Razorback fans are excited, but I know probably 90% of our listeners who are not Razorback fans are like, why in the world would that man go to Arkansas? We don't really care. We're just glad he's here, right?
Yeah.
We currently do not have a team, not a player.
There's not one player
on the roster today.
I think we got some water boys and some trainers, but we don't have anybody to put the uniforms on at the moment. But hey, and it's interesting. I've got several Kentucky fans that, God love them. I'm trying to get them saved, but they're Kentucky fans nonetheless. But they're like, you can have him. Everybody's like, hey, I think this is a good move for everybody. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's
we'll see.
It's going to be interesting. But hey, what we can say is it will not be boring.
No,
we can say that.
No, for sure it will not. Bud Walton may never be the same. We'll just wait and see.
That's right.
So no, we're excited about that. We're also excited about our guest today. So we talked about at the R&R conference, AI was like a big topic that we had. So I don't even want to kind of get into it. What do you say we just introduce our guest and kind of get to it?
That's what everybody's tuning in for anyway. So let's hop to it.
All right. Well, Scott, today we have an incredible guest joining us. Our guest today has been pioneering innovation and technology and driver recruiting for over 25 years. He leads innovation. He leads the actual innovation team at Conversion Interactive Agency, where he builds technology that helps fleets recruit smarter and retain better. And full disclosure, I have known our guest today for over 30 years. Listen, he has stories. We're not going to go there today. We did go to college together, and then we worked at the same ad agency shortly after college. And so here we are. We're still here today. So I want to welcome to the show the Director of Innovation for Conversion Interactive Agency, Lance Britton. Lance, you're on the pod. You're on the podcast.
I am. I've been waiting for the invite, so I finally got it. I was excited. No plane flew in and flew me anywhere or anything like that, but I was excited. I'm glad to be here.
You made the list, man. It is long.
I made it.
It's long and distinguished.
I mean, it was after 5 people rejected this interview, and I was 5th on the list. But other than that, I still made it, right?
Yeah.
No. Listen, we knew when we were going to start talking about AI, I was like, I know who we need to talk to. I just have to pay him to not tell any stories on me. And so that's what we did. That's why, Lance has a new car. No kidding.
I have stories.
All right. So Lance, we always start the episode with, we get pretty serious on this show. We're very professional. But we start with what we call the first 5, which are serious questions that seriously do not matter. So we're going to kick it off with that before we kind of dive into our topic for today. So the first question we have for you, Lance, is what is the best sandwich? What's your favorite sandwich?
Ooh, does a hamburger count as a sandwich?
I don't know. So here we go, Scott. This is always have these theories.
I mean, I'm going to go with, it's on bread. It's got meat in the middle. So
I think it's a sandwich.
I'm going with, a good, juicy, nasty, greasy cheeseburger. That's, you can't beat it.
Okay.
I'm in. I could take that all day long. All right. So second question, what is your favorite movie?
I'm going to go with, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Yes.
Just quotes for days.
All day.
Cousin Eddie, come on. Yeah, it's a classic. I could watch it year round.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on our Christmas episode that we did. And the best thing about that movie is the more times that you watch it, the funnier things that you will see. It's like small, funny things like Cousin Eddie, when he's got his white sweater on with the black dickie underneath it, that it's super outlined. Are you serious, Clark? I mean, you quote that at least once a day, right?
Exactly. Especially when the kids are not there and he's looking at hoping that they would, one's in the circus, right? One's joined the circus, the other one's in the pen, or getting cured off the wild turkey. I mean, you can't beat that.
Cured off the wild turkey and preparing for his career as a carnival worker. Yeah,
that's right. Spreading pixie dust on the tilt world. That's right.
I don't know if I've ever told y'all this, and I may have shared this on the Christmas episode. I can't remember, but my husband's name is Kobe. We call him when he has road rage or when he gets like wonky about something. We're like, okay, Clark. Like we call him Clark often. He does not love it, but we're like,
that's
okay,
a compliment.
Clark.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. So number 3. This is interesting as the Director of Innovation. What is the most used app on your phone?
Messages, text messages. I'm not a big phone user, social media, like as far as pleasure, enjoying social media for personal use. But so chances are it's going to be messages, and probably a close second would be maps, just because nobody knows where they're going anymore.
Yeah.
So,
how did we ever survive without Waze?
I don't know. That's exactly right. Yeah. You got to know where the cops are at, right?
There you go. All right, Mr. Director of Innovation, what is a talent that you have that only those close to you know about?
Well, that's a good question, because I recently discovered or uncovered, I don't know which one it would be, a hidden talent that I have. Evidently, I can run and act like just a crazy ostrich. I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that came from, but.
And that is a talent. Is that a talent?
Like if an ostrich was on crack and running around, I can do that.
I think I've seen this, Lance. I'm pretty sure I've seen this. That's not maybe what we called it.
No.
I've seen it. I think
Don't
I've
make me
seen
bring
you
up
do
tailgating
that.
days, Priscilla. Don't make me bring them up.
Yeah, we're not talking about tailgating days. No, we are not. Mm-mm.
I don't know if the ostrich is a talent, but you never know. I mean, maybe I have I can be in a circus too. Maybe there's a future for me there as well.
If not everybody can do it, it's a talent.
Exactly right.
Okay. All right. Let's see. The last one is, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, so if you weren't the director of innovation at Conversion, what would you hope to be doing?
I like consulting on technology and innovation. Because problem solving. I like solving problems. I like getting a problem and putting the pieces together, and critical thinking. So I would have to go with something like that. Just helping companies solve problems through technology and innovation. But beyond that, I'd probably do something in sports medicine, maybe. If it wasn't for school and the fact that I'd have to study medicine and pass tests, I would probably go on that route. But here I am in advertising and technology, so there you go.
Yeah, if I didn't have to go to class, school would have been a blast.
Yeah, I know. I have friends who are like, they're like, oh, I'm going to go back and get my master's. And I'm like, I don't have any desire. It's not that I don't want to keep learning. I do. I just don't want to actually have to go to a class. But I do respect it. I do respect it because, I can't do it. And again, Lance has a lot of stories from when we did or did not go to class, I guess we should say, Lance. Okay, so we're going to dive into some real questions. Scott and I were talking about earlier, Lance, at the recent recruitment and retention conference that we had. AI in recruiting was like this. I don't even think any of us dreamed it would end up being as big of a buzz as it was. Like every session we had on it, every general session, breakout session. And Lance, I know you were part of one of the general sessions that we had, and you've even been asked to speak at some upcoming events for different folks in the industry related to AI. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to get you on the show and just kind of pick your brain. But before we kind of dive into some of those specific questions related to how we're using AI in driver recruiting today, can you kind of answer the simple question? And I'm just going to say, from my standpoint, I'm not speaking for our listeners, but from my standpoint, like, think of it as AI for dummies, if you will. But what exactly is AI? When we say, oh, we're using AI in recruiting, can you kind of break it down for us in the simplest way and explain to us kind of what that means?
Yeah. So if I kind of compartmentalize it and put it in just recruiting and retention, or just talent acquisition, right? So it allows recruiters to be able to use the power of data to make better decisions. So that's kind of, if I had to give it a one sentence response, it would be using the power of data to be able to make better decisions. Now, within recruitment advertising, that could be anything from sourcing to screening candidates, analyzing resumes and job descriptions, and conducting pre-employment assessments, and even predicting if a candidate is actually a good fit for the organization or the culture. So basically, it uses technology to create and automate specific tasks or series of tasks to get the job done quicker. It's one of those things that humans cannot think fast enough compared to a computer or technology built to do things. So something that may take us days, hours to complete, it can be programmed and created to be able to analyze and look at that data and bring back decisions within milliseconds and act on those decisions. So on average, within talent acquisition, not just in transportation, a recruiter spends about 30 hours a week on administrative tasks. So that's a lot of time not actually talking to drivers or talking to candidates, right? And AI has the ability to significantly reduce that time so you can actually spend the time you need work on the goals that you have for hiring drivers or just candidates in general.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that. I remember being at the conference and someone coming up to one of our speakers on AI after the session that he had just spoken in, and they said to him, "We're never going to use that. Like, we're always going to be talking to the drivers." And he said something that kind of stuck with me to her. He said, "This is not replacing you. This is empowering you." So it's empowering you to be able to kind of focus on what you want to focus on. You want to connect with the driver and all those administrative tasks. So that's interesting that you said 30 hours. That's crazy. So very interesting. Well, that's helpful. That's super helpful.
And I think to that point, Lance, kind of moving to the second question here. So now that you've kind of explained the whole AI concept, maybe give us some practical examples of how the industry is using AI today to recruit and retain drivers.
Yeah, so I think there's a big difference in the technology that is out there and being utilized today within the industry for recruiting and retaining drivers compared to what it's capable of. The capabilities are endless to be able to utilize AI in recruiting and retention. And I think right now we're just kind of scratching the surface. And I think that's going to change a lot in the near future. But to answer your question, the ways that I'm seeing it utilized today and some of the ways that we're using it today, creating job descriptions. I mean, let's just start out with a simpler task is utilizing AI to help create a job description that just to save time, or not just job descriptions. Let's just content in general. It could be blog posts. It could be the job description. It could be ad titles, ad headlines, just content in general to be able to generate that a lot quicker. Again, saving time. But it's also something that once it generates it, teams have to go back, look at it, read through it, massage it a little bit to make sure the information is correct. But that's one way, is just to generate content. Within the marketing side of it, marketing jobs, you've got optimization for campaigns and performance. So going back to the data, right? So using the power of the data to make better decisions, it can use the data to process it, to make or come up with data points or specific data points that it can then say, okay, these things need to be adjusted. This is good, this is bad, based on the boundaries that we provided or tell it to learn by, and adjust and make decisions based on that, and improve performance. So it improves performance. Lead nurturing, to be able to automate lead nurturing tasks, to get to send out messages, send out content a lot faster. As soon as somebody submits a lead in, it goes into an ATS. The next thing you know, the driver's getting messages. They're nurturing full applications, which is awesome, because we've just in itself, within Lead Assist, a product that we have, we've seen a 40% increase in completed applications just by utilizing technology in AI and automation. Analyzing phone calls. You've been able to go through a phone call and analyze the persona and the content of the call, and being able to see what is, or score it really, to be so what they're interested in, what they're talking about, but scoring that phone call. And that's also something that can be used for the recruiters to help with and assist in training. So you can improve your performance as a recruiter by just being able to analyze those phone calls, get data points from it, see what's good, what's bad, what do you need to improve on. Another one is AI agents, that is chatbots. So instead of the normal chatbot where you have something that's ask it a question, it provides you an answer. It may know it, it may not. It's kind of pre-programmed to be able to answer certain questions. But with the AI agents, it's able to respond in a more natural way. So what you start looking at there is an increased user experience for the drivers. They get more information. It may make more sense. They can have a more real conversation, even though it's still a chatbot, right? And I think one of the other areas of using it that's big right now is strategy. We want to know what's going to work. We want to build a strategy that's going to work. So when we're looking at it, we can analyze the data using AI to say, okay, give me recommendations of what is a good strategy for this specific market, And it can take that data, crunch the numbers, provide you information based on historical data, and then also predictive data. So historically, what's happened, but based on that, based on these new findings and new information, what does it predict? What is the predictions, and provide you a strategy around that. So I think all those things together really comes down to time saving, and being able to get to your goals and get results back better, faster, in just a shorter time.
Yeah. Well, we've actually talked here about using AI to listen to our phone calls with drivers, specifically as they're talking maybe about equipment issues, so we can really start pulling out what are the big equipment issues. Is it a certain thing? And then you mentioned the predictive analytics, which is something that we're also looking with, is at looking at our data, potentially for drivers who have voluntarily left their job, and looking at the data behind that and being able to predict somebody's turnover risk based upon the issues that they're having. So that's something that we've been talking about as well.
Yeah, I think that fits really well with some of the other use cases that I kind of when I mentioned what is AI, and I did mention that it can help predicting candidate success and a good cultural fit. But I think it's taking that type of information and being able to see if that historically, that driver, how they answer questions, the things that they're saying, the calls that does it make sense? I mean, what is that data going to tell us if this person's a good fit or not? And I think, from a retention standpoint, I think the AI can even help from retention, even on the front end of even hiring a driver. So you can even get to the point you're heading a lot of that off, finding a better fit candidate just by utilizing the data.
Yeah, and I know our clients, the ones that are trying our new conversation analytics, they really love that because it's able to score the lead. It gives them a rundown of what was said, but then it also helps train the recruiter. I know you mentioned that, Lance, and that's all just from listening, from a machine listening to the phone call. So it's super interesting stuff. And honestly, I think sometimes we're a little fearful of this kind of stuff. But if you think about it, and half that stuff you just mentioned, Lance, I could think about in my daily life. Like, I bought a refrigerator a couple weeks ago. Pretty sure the AI agent I talked to was not a human, but we did the entire transaction from me talking to a bot. And I felt like me and Angie, we bought a refrigerator together. Although Angie was probably a computer, right?
Probably
AI
did,
Angie, yeah. She was, I'm sure. But but it's I think we're probably using this stuff a lot today, and we don't even necessarily go, oh, there's AI, there's AI, there's AI. It's already in our world, and we're not necessarily realizing it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think there's that fear out there that, of AI. You mentioned at the conference, the gentleman at the conference, he's already using it. He uses it all the time. He just doesn't realize it. And really, we've been using it for some time now in certain capacities, but you use it daily, even though when you don't think you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is probably the number one question that we get from clients. I know if I mention AI, this is the number one question I get. So I wanted to ask you, Lance, so that you could answer it for us. But really the question is, okay, I understand what AI is. I know that I probably need to be using it. Where do I actually start?
So yeah, that is, that's one of the questions I get a lot of. I mean, I heard a lot of it at the conference and in a couple other sessions and conversations I've had around AI. That's always the number one question. So first of all, one of the things that I've read a lot and heard other people say is, well, if you're not already thinking about using AI or already using it, then you're already behind. And that's true. And I don't think it's not anything to deter you from using it by no means, but I think it's more a statement to say, it's time to go. You got to catch up. I mean, this ship has sailed and you need to start paddling hard to get caught up a little bit. But the good thing is you can still get started. It's not, it's going to continue to change. It's going to get better. But it is time to jump in and take that dives. So getting started, really, you've got to start small. This is a prime example of learning to walk before you run. I think that starting small and not trying to put AI in every aspect to everything that you're doing is a good start, because you really need to start out and say, you know what, I need to identify just a couple of areas that it can help me. And you may make a list of 10 things that those 10 things maybe these are areas that I'm just wasting a lot of time, not necessarily wasting, but spending a lot of time. So I'm spending a lot of time in these areas, and how can I utilize AI to help with that? So that's a good start, to just kind of get that list down to a couple of ways that you want to start. But then the next step, and this is what I would say is the biggest piece of the entire thing, and this goes back to the definition of utilizing data. Do you have the data? You've got to have the data. It is a requirement, and it's not just data, it's solid data. And you've got to have to determine if the data that you have, is it standardized? Are you collecting the right data for the problem you're trying to solve? Because really, you got to look at, I've got to identify a couple of problems. Like, what are these problems I want to solve? Now, do I have the data for it? And how do I start getting the data for it? And how do I start structuring that data in a way that is consistent? And then that's really the brain behind it all, right? That's the data is the brain, and it's the knowledge base. So start with the data, identify some problems first, and figure out if you've got the data. If not, start working on a plan.
Yeah. And I would say too, I think that, a lot of times you can rely on your partners. Like, I dare say the clients that we work with, they rely on us quite a bit to, we meet regularly with our attorneys about AI. We have you and your team. We have a whole data team. You told us several years ago, if we're going to do this the way we really need to do it, we're going to have to invest in our data. So we have this entire data warehouse that I would say a decade ago, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have really, that maybe not was on the roadmap, but you kind of, as our innovation guy, kind of saw that coming. So I'm just saying that because a lot of times the easy answer to where I start is like, find the right partner. I'm not trying to plug conversion. I'm just saying, in general, there are folks that work in AI and in innovation and tech that can help. We can certainly do that in the recruiting or retention space. It sounds like y'all are working on some stuff too, Scott. And but I think, like, you have to rely on partners. Like, if what you do is haul your freight, man. Work with some partners on. So I think that's always important too, to just call out that a good partner can make a big impact on something like this, and help you kind of roadmap it out for, where do I start? What does this mean? What are all the implications for this? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things that you've got to rely on somebody else, because the data in itself is such a big undertaking. We integrate with a lot of different data sources, but once we've integrated with those, we still have to clean it and standardize it. And our data team has spent a very long time getting it to the point that we can build these types of technology on top of that and stay on top of it. So a good partner is definitely key.
So obviously, what we've been hearing a lot about, I think, particularly, over the last probably 6 to 12 months, is, Chat GPT. So when I think of AI, and I'm clearly nowhere near as educated about this as you are, but that's kind of been the buzzword, the popular word is Chat GPT. And so I'm pretty sure that's free. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but is that something that folks should be using, should be looking at?
So Chat GPT is free for the version 3.5. They have a 4-point version that is a paid version, and it starts out like $20 a month. And that's just kind of your basic plan. There are various plans that Chat GPT has up to an enterprise level, enterprise solution. Now, it's fun to get in there and play with the free version, and even the $20 version, to get in there and play around with and ask questions. And, it can come back with information and put it into a way that you understand it, pretty easy. And from a content standpoint, it definitely helps. But there's also the side of that what do I do with my own data? And should I use it with my own information, and definitely not in the free version. And you would want to be able to use it with your own data in a closed environment, to where you're integrating your information into that large language model, like the Chat GPT, and integrating the two together. You don't want your data, your information to be public. So, you need to make sure that that's closed off, and there's ways to do that. So it's kind of a yes and no question. It's no, you don't want to use it for your business with your own information, unless you're in the proper environment for that. It's definitely feasible to take that enterprise version and take some other technology and put it in that environment, and it would work great. But one of the things is with that is the accuracy of it, because ChatGPT is not perfect. By far, it is not perfect. If you go asking a question and it comes back, it's not going to be 100% every time, by no means. Example, job descriptions, right? So it's going to find the information that it can, that it knows, and that information comes from the internet, right? So it goes and scrapes the entire internet and collects it. Now it has its database, its knowledge, and it's basing its knowledge on something else. It's not an autonomous thing that goes out and thinks on its own. But if you take your information and put it in that closed environment, and your information alone, and it's not getting other information, it's going to be more accurate. So that would be a benefit. One of the big things behind it, though, is make sure that your legal team and your data security team, whoever's responsible for the data security, if it falls under IT, that they're in the know, that they're behind it, get that sign off on them. So it's kind of a two-part question. Use it in business, put it behind a closed environment. Otherwise, play around with it, go have fun with it, but don't believe everything it says.
Yeah, well, that honestly kind of leads us to our final question here that we had for you today. So with any new technology, there's this kind of inclination to have a little bit of fear, right? Some of us old timers like myself don't love change. And so we kind of get a little bit fearful. So what would you say to companies, organizations, carriers who are a little bit reluctant to use AI? Maybe they're having a hard time convincing their C-suite. Maybe, like you said earlier, like they're a little concerned about legal implications. What would you kind of say for those folks?
I think it's always good just to start with the legal team, just to get that buy-in, because at the end of the day, you're, from the C-suite standpoint, if you're trying to convince your C-suite to, in leadership to take that jump into utilizing AI, I think it's definitely going to help to have that information already in your back pocket, because that's going to be something that they're going to question right off the bat. I think if you're going to get beyond that fear for those that may be the blocker, or those in the C-suite, prepare information based on potential cost savings, because we've talked about time, and from a C-suite standpoint, time is money. I know that I cannot walk into Kelly Walkup's office and get anything approved without me being able to say, this is the reason why, this is the time saving aspect of it. So bring some use cases. How is it going to save you time? Take that information and say, look, this is on average, this is going to cut back on this amount of time these recruiters are spending. This is going to try to, from administrative to, how is it going to help it in with efficiency and accuracy? That's the other thing. I mean, we've got to increase we can drive efficiency, we can drive accuracy, we can get our costs down a little bit in these areas, we can save this much money. Prepare that information. It's out there. It should be pretty easy for them to be able to put together to say, wow, look at the time saving here. Just an example I brought up earlier would be lead nurturing, utilizing lead assist. If you can go in and say, look, we want to do this type of thing, and it's going to save us, it's going to increase our completed applications by 40%. And what does that mean? I think that's when they start seeing the benefits of AI. So bring in use cases, talk to your legal team, tie it to the money, and to efficiency and cost saving initiatives. And I think that'll probably be a good start and a big win, especially when talking to that C-suite.
All right. Well, this was helpful. I think if nothing else, this is a great conversation starter for folks who are, okay, we know I mean, and like you said, you're probably already using it anyway. You just may not realize it. But this was good. This was good to kind of help us put some practical stuff on to maybe a few of the things that we talked about at the conference, and even for those who weren't at the conference. So thanks for hanging out with us, Lance.
Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. I'm sorry I didn't get to share stories about you, but we'll do that next time.
Part 2.
Yeah.
Part two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it, Lance.
Thank you.
As you kind of dive into this, if there's any other fun stuff you find, let us know and we'll have you back on.
Will do. Sounds great.
Thanks,
All
Lance.
right.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, it is that time for the show and the resource where we want to make sure we provide you with resources, data, information that has recently caught our eye to help you recruit smarter and retain better. So, Priscilla, are you ready to blow me away with your data point?
Yeah, so I kind of went and got one from the vault, I will say.
Nice.
So here's what we're kind of running into as of late. And I hope this feeling is correct. But I don't know about you, but we are starting to feel a little bit of a turn economically where folks are like, hey, we're going after a lot of freight. Think I'm going to need some more drivers. I'm gonna, hey, we need to amp up our recruiting because this, and this is happening, or we're getting more loads from this shipper. And, so we're starting to, there's rumblings, quite a few, to be honest. Matter of fact, last month we saw a spike, and we're already kind of having lots of conversations with folks again. So I just think it's a courtesy reminder to folks for, we did a case study, I guess it was about a year and a half ago, on the impact of cutting off your recruitment marketing funnel and what it takes to kind of get that back to where it was. So, because a lot of folks did this, and listen, I know some folks did it to stay in business. Like, there's no judgment on the fact that you had to cut off some of your recruitment marketing. Okay. I understand budgets weren't where they were previously for whatever reason. Let's say that you had to cut your recruitment marketing budget. And now you're starting to have conversations with your sales team like, hey, we're going to get this new freight. We think that we're going to need some more drivers. Hey, what does it look like if we wanted to hire drivers in East Texas? Could we do that? Like, what does that look like today? If those kinds of conversations are starting to happen, I think it's a good time for you to look at your driver pipeline and see the healthiness or unhealthiness of it. Okay. Now, as a reminder, when we did this case study, and I'm not going to share like the whole case study, I'm just going to share the part that was when folks started to ramp back up, what some of those numbers look like and what some of that data looked like. So we did a case study on a carrier that we did kind of a side-by-side case study, by the way. If you want it, we're going to link to it. We'll link to it in the show notes. But we had a client who made the decision that we're going to remain invested, we're not going to cut. And then we had, some clients that made the opposite decision and had to dramatically cut, again, for various reasons. And so what was the impact after? Now, this period of time was a lot shorter that they cut because this was COVID when they cut. Mm-hmm. So remember COVID, we were only down for like 4 or 5 months and then it went way back up, crazy town, right? So,
yep.
But this downturn that we've had was much longer than 4 or 5 months. So just know that going in, it's all relative. These numbers are. But after 5 months, this particular client that had cut decided I've got to ramp back up. The demand is back and I desperately need drivers. So after they had cut their spend by 85% and removed most of their strategy. So you can imagine kind of what that had done to their driver pipeline. And then they decided, oh goodness, it's coming back with a vengeance. And again, it was with a vengeance. This time may not be with a vengeance. So that might be where you get some of that cushion a little bit. but they decided they were going to double their spend after 5 months. They doubled their spend in driver recruitment marketing to rebuild their pipeline. By month 8, okay, so 3 months after, the demand was 42% more than the pre-freight slowdown. So in other words, they had to double their spend plus 42% just to try to stay on track. And so what is that? 92? No, I don't do math. 50 plus 42. That's 92. Yeah. So
You're asking the
I
wrong
know,
person.
but
mathematically.
I'm saying like the reality
Yeah.
of a situation is that was only after 5 months of cutting that pipeline off. In many cases today, folks have cut that pipeline off for a year, I dare say, in some cases, maybe even more, which means all of that momentum, you're going to have all of that momentum plus some behind you to get your pipeline where you need it to be. My advice to you is to look at what you need to do today to get your pipeline healthy. Don't forget about the funnel, all the phases of the funnel. But I would say if you're going to battle for some budget with your C-suite, you can tell them that there was a case study done and driver demand was 42% more than pre-freight slowdown spend. So if you go back and see, what did you cut your spend, add 42% on top of that of what you spent before. That's the data point I think everybody needs to hear, because this will help you not, as demand comes back, to help you really kind of understand maybe a good ballpark of where you need to be. Maybe that will be helpful in identifying where your budget needs to be, because it hasn't been there in so long that you're not exactly sure what you need to pay for.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I have talked to several people, in particular in the last few months. Obviously, this freight recession seems to have lasted a little bit longer. It seems like we're coming out of it maybe a little bit slower. But the one common theme that I have heard from folks is they think that once this kind of does officially kind of flip back, that the driver shortage, or whatever you want to call it, but the need for drivers, let's go there, is going to be worse than it has ever been. And that is the one thing that I have consistently heard from carriers, large, medium, small. So it's coming, and it's interesting that this was your data points, because we don't, just for everybody to know, we don't discuss our data points before we do this. So I don't know what she's saying. She doesn't know what I'm saying. So to build off of what you were saying, I did not go back in the vault. I went very early or very new data, and I looked at our Q1 data. So Q1 obviously just ended. We'll be coming out with our Q1 data download, if not by the time this is out, shortly thereafter. But my data is going to deal with Q1. And for the first time since Q4 of 2022, compensation issues were the top issue. Now, that's not all that surprising, but what is surprising is when you dig down, and we're starting to see a shift in the data that is showing some of those signs that we may be coming out of this. And let me kind of back that up. So if you go back to Q1 of 2022, so we're kind of in the midst of everything being really, really good, right? In Q1 of 2022, drivers that were talking about compensation, the top issue for them was miles at 37.6%. Pay rate was 33.0%. So pretty equal, right? Since that time, so since Q1 of 2022, when we started seeing things start to slow down, the complaints about miles had gone up as high as 60% of the drivers complaining about pay. And the height of that was in Q2 of 2023. Probably not a big surprise to anyone. But we have seen since then that we're starting to see a little bit of a drop, just a little bit of a drop in that. But in Q1, mileage complaints were down 4% from Q4 of 2023. Drivers talking about their pay rate, complaining about their pay rate, went up 4% from Q4 of 2023. So what we're starting to see is getting back to kind of that, if you go back to Tom Albrecht, that back in January, talking about equilibrium. Normally we see pretty much an even split when it comes to compensation issues, drivers talking about lack of miles versus their pay rate. And what we're starting to see is drivers complaining about miles is coming down and drivers complaining about pay rate is going up. And so I think that's kind of starting to see the beginning signs of maybe starting to come out of this. The fact that compensation is up, I think is still saying we're still in this to some degree, but we're starting to see as you dig down and scratch a little deeper into the data, we're starting to see now signs that drivers are now talking more about their pay rate and less about miles, which is a little bit of an indication that maybe we're kind of coming out of this.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Very. And yeah, well, and a lot of people, and I know the data from Fleet Intel has shown us this, but a lot of carriers decrease their starting pay, not obviously not for existing drivers. I think we've talked about this a little bit.
Right. We have a little bit.
So it'll be interesting to see if they end up going back.
Well, to that point, and I certainly understand why we're doing that. I understand why you can't decrease pay for people that you've already upped their pay for, but you can lower for starting. But the interesting thing there from a retention standpoint, and we're already seeing this, is those drivers talk. The ones that have been there for a year and the ones that have been there for a week, they talk pay. It's not like a lot of us that sit in an office. I don't discuss my pay with you. You don't discuss your pay with me, but the drivers do.
Yeah.
It's kind of a badge of honor of what that cent per mile is. And as you do that, and again, understandably so, understand why carriers are doing it, but they need to know it's going to cause a retention problem, and you're going to have the ability to get in front of those issues as quickly as possible to keep drivers from starting to leave as a result of that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been a fun episode.
Yeah, I learned a lot. Yeah. Anytime we talk AI and technology, I feel a little bit dumber.
I know.
But yeah, I learned a lot today. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for listening to The Resource. If you had fun, got some good information, some good data, please give us a high five by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to hit the subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode.
Yeah, and if you have any questions or feedback to share, you can hit us up on social media or via email, and we'll be back on our next episode with more fun data information to help you in your recruiting and retention game. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, guys.